The books are pretty much mostly just my adventures and happenstance and stuff like that. But because of it's my own tale, a lot of that has to do with my own personal likings, focuses, stuff like that. So for me, a lot of this so far in these two books anyway is the single female traveler. And a lot of that I wasn't really aware of at the time was anything different because that was my own little bubble.
You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes.
Thank you, Bob. Glad to be here.
Now, you're in Colorado, correct?
We're in Durango, which is southwest. Yeah, we're right around Four Corners. So we're about an hour away from Mesa Verde. New Mexico is about 20 miles down the road. Telluride's 2 hours up from us.
In between Jersey and Colorado, you've been to a lot of places.
I have been to 5 of 7 continents. I know that. I have not counted how many countries because I'm not into the counting thing, but Australia, Africa, I've been to South America quite a few times, Mexico, Canada. I lived in Alaska for 8 years.
Nice.
Sweden. My sister lived in Sweden for a while, so I spent a couple of months over there visiting. Europe, the whole thing. So I really enjoy third world countries mostly, just because I get a lot more out of it. The books are based on my travels from a long, long time ago, in my 20s and 30s. Depends on which book you're reading, but I had traveled around with about 8 journals in my stuff for most of my life, waiting for the right time for that to come to fruition, that I would write them down. And that finally happened in the last couple of years. So the chef thing happened for the past 25 years. So I just stopped doing that around COVID, just because of the market, and it wasn't planned to stop, but now I'm flipping houses. So I moved along to something else.
Instead of flipping burgers, you're flipping houses. Okay. I'm sure it was more than burgers.
Exactly. One or the other. Yeah.
So you kind of answered it. I was going to say, so why write a book now? What prompted you, besides the fact that you have a lot to tell? I mean, writing a book is not easy, I'm assuming.
No, and it has kind of been in the plans. I mean, it's kind of been on the back burner for a long time, just because I've had these journals of when I traveled extensively in my younger years. And I think the biggest thing that kind of pushed it was, even before COVID happened, I moved to Vermont. And Vermont is a very interesting place. For those of you who have never lived there or been there, very different from what I have been used to. And I just got to talking to people about my past and my adventures in my life, and a lot of people that I met in Vermont were very interested. That was the term for me. Wow, you're very interesting. And it kind of put it into perspective of what other people thought was interesting and what I really wasn't aware of. So it kind of pushed me a little bit. I had a lot more motivation from what other people's perspectives were on the East Coast.
And you have a friend there, I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I'm being intruded.
No problem.
It's not actually, they're called the Galavanting Goddess Chronicles, but they're not in chronological order.
Okay.
So my travels, The Bite of the Travel Bug is first, but that book was actually written second. So they're kind of all over the place. But The Bite of the Travel Bug just got published about 2 months ago, I want to say, maybe 3 months ago. And the Alaska to Cuba and back one was 2 years ago.
So it sounds like an obvious answer. Who should read these books? I mean, obviously people that want to travel, but is it more than that? I mean, is it great stories along with, or is it advice?
Yeah, I think
advice like, if you're ever in Alaska, make sure you do this or that, or is it more stories that you have experienced?
Well, the Alaska one is definitely coming up. So that would be more of I lived there for 8 years kind of thing, not there's of course a lot of stories in there, but it's more a life adventure than just this was 3 months or 6 months or something. The books are pretty much um, mostly just my adventures and happenstance and stuff like that. But because of it's my own tale, a lot of that has to do with my own personal likings, focuses, stuff
Mhm.
like that. So for me, a lot of this so far in these two books anyway is the single female traveler. And a lot of that I wasn't really aware of at the time was anything different because that was my own little bubble. But the it's kind of motivation for single women, not just single women, but women that want to kind of branch out and do something that is definitely not conventional, maybe step off the edge a little bit. And also, I'm very environmental. So there's a lot of environmental stuff specifically in this, The Bite of the Travel Bug, um, just because I was extremely privileged to see certain things 20 years ago that I didn't realize how privileged I was. And now, in retrospect, I have that time difference. And a lot of that is kind of written in the book as well. Like, I, seeing the Great Barrier Reef in its prime, no one will ever see that again. So that kind of stuff that kind of goes along with my own personal travels.
So I'm going to jump ahead to a couple questions down the lane here because since you have been around the world, so to speak, you've been to a lot of places, I guess is my point, in your environmental.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel the Earth is warming? I know that's kind of off the topic, but do you feel what you're traveling?
It's
Do you
funny
think it's
because
warming like they say, or is it over exaggerated?
yes, I think for me, I think that question, and that's really interesting that you brought that up because that specific question of do you believe in global warming has been asked to me probably 3 times in the last 2 weeks. And I don't know where it's coming from because for me, I'm like, well, I don't really think it's a matter of what I believe. I think it's a scientific fact that it is warming. Now, whether that's human caused or not it can be an opinion in my viewpoint. So yes, I have definitely seen global warming in my travels, specifically in my lifetime. And I don't use that term specifically in the book, global warming, but there are definitely certain things that are tied directly to that. And one of them is coral bleaching.
Hmm.
So when I mentioned the Great Barrier Reef, that is something that I don't think I knew about until later. I mean, it's kind of a new environmental occurrence anyway, especially the term. But yes, I have definitely seen there's a whole my afterthoughts on The Bite of the Travel Bug is all about that kind of how the natural world has changed in the last 25 years so blatantly from what I saw 25 years ago to what there is now. And a lot of it does have to do with the warming of the planet,
Hmm. Yeah.
unfortunately.
Favorite location that
Yeah.
you have been to?
Oh, you know, I would probably say Africa was amazing. And I never really had what much of a want or need to go there. Funny enough, I ended up there because of some guy and I stayed. The guy didn't work out, and Africa just left a huge impact on my soul for the last 25 years. It was, I have been all over the world, and I would say that 4 month trip is something that will never be comparative.
You mentioned you loved Alaska. True.
I loved Alaska, definitely. For me, that was different though, because Alaska was 8 years.
Hmm.
Alaska was my life for a big chunk of it. And Africa was a trip, it was an adventure. So maybe that would have been different if I was in Africa for 8 years and Alaska for 4 months. I don't know. But Alaska definitely, it was more of a, I belong there, I fit, more of a natural kind of flow of where I belonged, where Africa was definitely an adventure. Yeah, so what brought me to Alaska, I had friends. I had traveled a little bit before then. I had friends from Australia that were living in Anchorage. So I went up to visit for a summer, and that was the beginning of 8 years. So it just got to me. And I was really fortunate in my younger years that I didn't succumb to a career, so to say.
Right.
And I was very open and fluid about where I wanted to be. And I found myself in a lot of spots, not specifically because of work or of money, but because it fit and I loved it. And I just figured out how to make it work for myself. And Alaska was one of those places. If anyone has ever been to Homer, there's the highway from Anchorage goes down the Kenai Peninsula, and when you get to Homer, there is what is called the overlook on the highway. So you driving through the tundra and the woods, and all of a sudden you're looking at like one of those Alaskan scenes. Like you come out of these woods and these trees, and you're all of a sudden looking across the bay, Kachemak Bay, to the Kenai Peninsula and the mountains beyond it. And it just was like this aha moment of like, how could I ever be anywhere else? Like, here I am, you know?
It's like a
and
painting.
and I stayed for 8 years.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah, it really. And if you're into that, I mean, I lived off the grid. I didn't have water, and we had to chop wood and haul water and do all that stuff. And I loved it. A lot of people that I met that came up for vacations, it's quaint, it's beautiful, but it's not easy. Living there is definitely a hard living. And if you're not made of that stuff, you want running water.
How long do you think you could
Yeah.
isolate yourself from people? I'm talking, and I mean no contact, no phones, nothing. How long do you think you could go?
Yeah, it's hard. And that was really hard for me when I did live up there. Not that I was completely isolated, but it's very isolating. It is. It's not like living in, as what we call the lower 48 down here. Socializing is a different term up there. So I have definitely, one of these conversations that I had with someone in Vermont that kind of uh, was the motivation for me to start writing these things. I just remember her saying, I was telling her about, she was asking me all kinds of stuff about where I'd been and what I'd done. And, one of them was Colorado, and then it was Alaska. And I was talking about my travels and everything. And she was like, wow, you must really like the cold. And I was like, what? Like, no. Like, why would you say that? Not even dawning on me, like, well, obviously, right? And she was like, well, most of these places that you've lived are just really remote, and they're very either far north or very high altitude, or like, I just assumed you must like the cold. And I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, not necessarily. I just don't like people.
How long did it take you to write this book or these books? Because you got to. I mean, you got to be organized and put it down on paper and finish it to where people can buy it.
Well, yeah, you have to have a bit of luck too, and time is good. So once again, I found myself with a bunch of time on my hands when COVID hit, because I was in the service industry. I was a chef. I was running my own B&B. I had cooking classes in an event center, and I had all these different things going on, but they were all in the service industry. And when COVID hit, that all took a huge dive. So I found myself all of a sudden in the real estate market, because I had a house and had fixed it up and was looking to sell it. And I had a lot of time on my hands. So that's what happened. I was like, okay, well, I guess now's the time. And they are self-published. So it's not like I went through a publishing company and did that whole conventional thing. there's a couple of reasons for that I won't really get into, but I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how I was doing it. It was kind of one of those, all right, well, here we go. I have the time, I have the motivation. I'm just dumb enough to know that, to not know what I know, that kind of thing, and lo and behold, it happened. And it was, I gotta say, even with self-publishing, it is not an easy process. There's a lot to put together. There's a lot to figure out for someone who's very tactile with my hands, but not necessarily a computer whiz. I feel pretty proud of myself for doing it, but at the same time, there's probably 5 more in me that have to come out.
Wow.
So it's not over yet.
Have you ever, and again, I know you traveled when you were younger, pretty much sometimes on your own. Were you ever in a situation where either it's nature or people and you were like, oh shit, Lisa, I'm a little in too deep? You know what I mean? Like scared.
Oh, there's a lot of oh shit moments. Yeah. And
I mean, what one sticks out?
It's funny because there's so many of
What
them.
one sticks
really
out though that you tell us? Danger. I mean, like, oh my God, this is not
I
good.
would say, yeah. And there are a couple of those definitely in Africa that happened, mostly with animals, with nature, and not knowing enough of my surroundings and what I should know, what protocol was. One of them specifically was I was traveling through Lake Malawi, and I was with a couple of people that were kind of traveling here and there. I was pretty much alone, but we were staying at this almost hostel like place on the shores of Lake Malawi, little thatched roof hut things. And they had a big, like, floating dock out a little bit away from the shoreline. And there was a couple of us that had swam out there and were kind of lounging in the sun. And one by one, everybody kind of disappeared to go do their own thing. And lo and behold, I kind of look up and I'm the only one out on this float at that point, which is usually not a big deal, whatever. But then I realized there's a hippo that is coming at the float at one point. And if you don't know Africa, hippos are extremely dangerous. They kill a lot more people than lions kill every year. And large, yes. And they're not afraid of anything. And it took me a minute to kind of, look around and get my bearings and kind of think, oh shit, like this is not I'm not in a good situation here. And I know that the hippo, I know logically it's not coming for me. It's just coming because there's a dock here and it wants to sit on the dock, but I happen to be on the dock and I'm not near land. So, as I have written in one of my stories, like I hit the water. It took me a split second to be like, do I wait and see where it goes? Or do I jump in the water where it is and try to beat it, And I did, and I had to jump in the water. And I must have looked like one of those cartoon characters, like swimming and swimming and swimming and never reaching the water, just going, like my heart rate was so high. And I thought, well, if I get out of this one, okay, I need to learn this lesson. Like, don't be putting yourself in places where there's hippos. You're alone. I did, obviously. I'm alive. Right. I got out, but yeah, that was a
interesting. So hypothetical. If you could live anywhere in the world right now, but you can never leave that spot for the rest of your life. In other words, Alaska, and you're there for the rest of your life, or Colorado, whatever. Where would you go if you had to make that decision, but you cannot leave for the rest of your life?
Right. I think that whole not leaving for the rest of my life is kind of like a sentence.
That's what I'm asking.
But,
hypothetical.
But I get what you're saying. Right. And I always end up back in Colorado.
Really?
I mean, I have been in other places for years, and my heart somehow finds its way back to Colorado. I love the mountains of Colorado. I love where I am. I love going hiking. I love being close to nature and knowing that there are mountain lions and bears in the backyard at night. I just love it.
Wow.
Yeah. I live at 8,000 feet. So me and my husband live at 8,000 feet. I'm now married. I didn't get married until 50 just because it didn't fit for me. But now that I am, we are renovating a house, building our own house. We're up at 8,000 feet in a mountain above a little mountain town. And yeah, we love it. It's great
Beautiful,
here.
beautiful. Uh, so let's step away from the podcast just a little bit. The subject, I should say. I have a segment, this or that.
Mhm.
It's just a preference thing. I'm going to give you two choices. You tell me your preference. Doesn't mean you hate the other one. Doesn't mean you hate
Okay.
it. Just, it's a preference thing. Just a fun thing. All right, here we go. Coffee or tea?
Ooh, coffee. But I can't have it because it
Sounds
gives
like-
me
so that's a
headaches. So
that's a
I
neg-
want it more.
No, wait. You can't have it because it gives you headaches? Wow. Because I know, like,
It does. Caffeine gives me migraines, so I've had to quit coffee. But then, your question is, what do I want more?
Right.
And that's what I want.
It's
more.
funny because my wife, I mean, we drink coffee, but if she doesn't drink coffee, then she's batshit crazy. I mean, she's like, I gotta get it. I gotta get it. She gets a headache from not drinking it. Anyway,
Gotcha. Or gives you one. I don't know.
pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
What do you? I mean, just a sidetrack. What do you enjoy as a chef cooking the most? I mean, I'm sure you cooked a bunch of variety of stuff, but
Oh God, everything. And it's funny because I love making pasta. I do. Making
you mean
pasta
making the
is,
actual
is
homemade?
so
You mean homemade
validating
pasta or actually cooking it?
Yeah, making
wow.
pasta. Like rolling out the dough and cutting it and forming tortellinis and making the filling and all that.
I'll
love
be over
doing
tomorrow.
that. But there's just something about
That's great. I'm Italian, so I'll take that.
there's something about pizza that's just such a comfort thing, like it's pizza. Like pizza
There you
and a
go.
beer, that's
There you
just
go.
it.
All right. Alaska or Vermont?
Oh God,
Yeah,
Alaska.
I know that
that's
was
not even
I
a
mean,
question for me.
we have been to Vermont too, and it was very beautiful and yeah. I mean, it's different. Alaska's a different.
That book. I have to say, I had almost 7 years in Vermont as well. So 8 years in Alaska, 7 years in Vermont, and I don't think that I will miss any of that
Really?
7 years in Vermont. And I miss a lot of those 8 years of Alaska.
Now, which part of Vermont?
It did not fit me.
Which part of
at all.
Vermont?
I lived in Grand Isle, so in the islands in the middle of Lake Champlain, in between New York and Vermont.
All right. Fish, meat.
Yep. Fish. I've been a vegetarian for
Answers
25
that question.
years, so I do eat fish though. Yeah, that's pretty easy.
Snow or heat?
Well, see, obviously other people think snow for me. So I can take the heat, and I love the beach. Yeah, but for me, when you're cold, you can get warm, but when you're hot, it's hard to cool down.
All right. I think I know the answer to this
snow.
one. Cat or dog?
Oh well, I got both, but
tough one, then.
I would have to go with dog because we're aiming for like 420 pounders at some point soon here.
Okay.
Kind of comes with the whole mountain scene,
I
you
hear
know.
you. I hear you. Driver or passenger? Would you
Driver,
drive?
definitely.
All right.
Yeah. I grew up in Jersey,
Jersey.
so I need to be behind
All
the wheel.
You kind of answered this one. Ocean or mountains?
I love the ocean, and I think that's why I loved Homer so much, is because it was oceans and mountains, so I didn't have to choose.
Beautiful.
But ultimately, mountains won.
Plane or train? Travel-wise.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one because my environmentalist says train, right? Immediately, like, well, planes aren't that great for carbon footprints and all that stuff, but trains take a long time, and I'm very impatient, so that's a tough one. Yeah.
Well, you're leaning towards plane or
I'll say plane.
All right.
Yeah.
Fishing or hunting?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever hunted, but fishing. Or hunting. Fishing.
Just Yeah, I haven't hunted, and my whole background of food and being a chef and vegetarian has always been, if I can't kill it, I won't eat it. So I have no problem with fishing. I have done that many times in
Salmon.
Alaska, but the hunting thing, no, I never. I can be pretty good. I'm a good shot, and I'm good with it bow and arrow, but I haven't actually taken a life with
Okay.
them.
All
So.
right. Last one. Sunshine or moonlight?
Moonlight. Moonlight.
Yeah,
I
that
guess.
works. Yeah.
I mean, I love sunshine too, but I'm very in touch with the cycles of the moon, so that's way more appealing to
I
me.
hear you. So where can people, I mean, the obvious answer is like Amazon, but where can people find your book / website, etc.?
So website is lisaruoff.com, so just my name.com. And of course, the books themselves are all over the place online. If you want to get them from me, I send them out as well. If it's easier to go online to one of those Barnes and Noble, Amazon, whatever, they're all over.
Awesome. All right.
But I love sending them myself because then I can sign them and,
Okay.
make them
That makes
personalized.
I like that idea. Okay. All
So
right.
it's a little
With photos? Are there pictures too? I'm assuming.
No photos.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no. And I'm trying to get my act in gear so that I can actually market and do like book signings and have, photo albums of these places that I've been to. But yeah, I'm still plastering walls at the moment. Getting there.
Well, at least you're not getting plastered.
No, that was a couple of decades ago.
I hear you. What does 2024 look like for Lisa?
Well, I have started the third book in the series, and that will be about my time in Alaska. So those adventures, I would like to say that would be out in a year, but it would be a push right now because my husband and I are working on renovating our house that we're living in right now, and then we're going to be moving on to our home site that we're planning on building our home on. So that kind of we'll see how many snow days I have that we can't get out. Because then, of course, snow days are snowboarding and snowshoeing.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So we'll see. Yeah. So we've got a lot of building stuff to do, as well as me writing. And of course, as I said, I have plans in the next couple of months to get 2 more very big dogs, which, I've had to talk my husband into for a while. So I have to get on it now.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
So there'll be some dog training in the future too.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on, and I'll be in touch.
You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes.